Hey, Jim Welninski here, and today I want to talk about something really cool, color grading. Color grading is something that a lot of photographers, at least a lot of photographers that I know, don't take super seriously, and I think they should, because a good color grade has the power to bring your whole photograph together and make it a cohesive whole and unify the mood of the piece that you're working on. So this is a photograph of my friend Jen Renier, who lives in San Diego, California. And she is an up-and-coming fantasy photographer slash compositor, somebody to really be on the lookout for because she's going to make quite a splash. I was color grading this photograph, and I took it into Effects, and that's the version that you see on the left. And what I did was put a magenta photo filter over this. And there's a lot of things about this that I'm happy with, that I like. You know, I like the way her face is shaded, and I like the overall tone of the photograph, the softness of it. But there's some things I don't like about it as well. I don't like the way my whites are all polluted with this. And no matter how much I brushed on this, I couldn't get it to look quite right. And I think that the skin tone is way too orange for me. I had to bring in a lot of that filter to get the effect I wanted on the background and on the shadows. And it just turned her skin really orange. And trying to brush it out, again, I couldn't really get the result that I wanted. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to take a different approach here. And so then I came up with the photo on the right. I used a really simple tool to do the color grading in this, but I used it in kind of a sophisticated way. So this is kind of a short clip, but it's really an introduction to a much larger subject that I'm going to encourage you to explore and play with and spend some time studying because it's really worthwhile. We need to talk a little bit about color theory. I'm not going to get too heavy into this because we don't have a lot of time, but there's just a couple of things that I think are important for you to understand. So as photographers, we work in the RGB color space. We all know this, and those are the colors that are represented on the left-hand side of the screen over here. Printers, on the other hand, and by that I mean process printers, when you send stuff out to have it printed, they work in the cmyk color space. If they're doing any kind of analog printing, they're printing on paper using ink, they're using the cmyk color space. So cyan, magenta, yellow, CMY, K is for black, and we don't need black in this model because black is contained in each of these three colors in the RGB color space. So the arrows here represent the idea that in the digital world, these two colors are opposites. Red is the opposite of cyan. Green is the opposite of magenta. Blue is the opposite of yellow. If you want to take red out of something, add a little cyan to it. If you want to take a little green out of something, add a little magenta. And I'd just like to add here that I don't know of anybody who teaches color theory for photographers better than my good friend Blake Rudis. If you're an ON1 Plus member, then you know that he was Coach of the Month last month, and he did a couple of videos on color effects that were really awesome. And the way he teaches color theory is so clear, and it's really easy to understand. So I would encourage you to go out onto the ON1 website and just type Blake Rudis into the search box and watch his videos on color because they're great. So keeping in mind the idea of these opposite colors, let's look at the curve tool really quick. So we know that in the RGB curve, which is usually what we work in, when we raise the curve, the tones get lighter. When we pull the curve down, the tones get darker. When you move into the channels of the curves tool, things get a little more complicated. The curve still represents lightness and darkness, but it also represents a color shift. If you pull the curve up in the red channel, you're going to add red to your image. You'll see this in a minute. If you pull it down, you're going to add cyan. In the green channel, if you pull up, you're going to add green, and things are going to get lighter. If you pull down, you're going to add magenta. And in the blue channel, if you pull up, you're going to add blue, and if you pull down, you're going to add yellow. So I want you to keep these ideas in mind as we go back to Photo RAW. And I'm going to show you what the original photograph looked like. This is the original photo. So that doesn't look anything like the finished piece. And this is what I mean when I say what comes out of the camera is just raw material for your vision. It goes into the hopper and gets churned through the creative process until you come out with something that represents what it is that you're trying to convey. So let's take this photo into effects and we're going to dissect it. All right, so here we are in layers, and you can see that I have a smart layer here, which means that I've got some effects nested in here. So we're going to pop over into effects really quick and take a look at what I've done here. So just let me collapse all of these, and we'll go through them really, really fast, but I want to spend some time on the color grading. So I added a vignette on the top layer. If I turn that off, you can see that I added some dynamic contrast to her face. This is a softening effect, just using negative clarity in the tone enhancer. Here I just added some shading to her face. This is where I brightened her face in the umbrella a bit. And this is where the magic happens. This is the tone enhancer. So this tone enhancer, I just darkened the photo. And the way I did that was just by going into the curves tool and pulling down the whole curve. Now, why did I pull the highlights down as well? Because if I leave it like that, I have an unbalanced tonal structure to my photograph. So that's why I pulled it down like this, so that my tonal balance is maintained. So let's just collapse that. And I'm going to add another tone enhancer. We're going to do our grading. So why a tone enhancer? Because the tone enhancer gives me a curve, and with a curve, I can do anything. So the first thing I'm going to do is activate my mask and go up into the mask settings and create a luminosity mask, which separates the lights and the darks of my photo. Okay? And you can see that the whiter parts of the mask represent the lighter tones in my photo. I'm going to invert that because where I really want to add this color grading is in the darker midtones and the shadows. Now all I have to do is go down to the curve and start to play. So remembering from before, if I go back to my little presentation here, that if I'm in the red channel and I pull up, I add red. If I pull down, I add cyan. Pull up in the green channel, add green. Pull down, add magenta, and so forth with the blue channel. So back to Photo RAW here, if I pull up, I add red. If I pull down, I add cyan. If I go to the green channel and pull up, I add green. If I pull down, I add magenta. And in the blue channel, if I pull up, I add blue. And if I pull down, I add yellow. Now that's pretty gross looking the way I did it, but if you apply this really selectively and with a really soft hand, it looks really good. So since I only want to apply this to my shadows, I'm going to restrict all of the upper tones in my photograph, which are the tones between this midpoint here and what's in the upper right-hand corner. So I'm just going to lock those down by clicking right here and putting a point at the midtone. Now the only thing that I'm going to be affecting are my deeper shadows. So I'm just going to pull the red up, and I just added some red to my shadows. And I want to make it kind of purpley. So I'm going to go to the blue channel and do the same thing. If I mix blue and red, you get purple and pink. And so if I bring this up, that's kind of the tone that I'm looking for, right? So just with a couple of really quick moves in a luminosity mask, I can do a lot of really cool things. So let's reset this, and what if I want to go a different direction? What if I want to, say, add some green to the shadows? Fashion photographers in magazines do this a lot. We'll add a bit of green to the shadows. And I'm going to go into the blue channel and add a point here. And I might add a little blue. And now things have gotten kind of cyan-y almost. So that's pretty cool. Let's look at a different option. What if I want to go to the red channel and I decide that I want to add a little bit of cyan? That changes the whole mood of the photograph just with that one move, right? If I go to my green channel, and let's see, what if I add a little green? Look at the two different moods here. This is almost, this is almost cinematic. And that's super moody. So let's try something else. What if I go to my blue channel and click and add some yellow to my shadows? Now I'm going to go to my green channel and maybe add a little magenta. And now I get kind of a tobacco look. So what I want you to take from this is that this color grading technique is not complicated. Like most things in photo post-processing, it's a simple tool used in a sophisticated way. The key to mastering this is to remember these relationships. And if you have trouble remembering them, all you need to do is write vertically on a piece of paper, RGB. We all know what that is. And then right next to those letters on the right, in the same vertical way, write CMY. And those are your color relationships. Those color relationships are the key to unlocking this curve. Have fun with this and be creative. This is Jim Welninski. See you next time.